Levent was 38. He carried the kind of exhaustion people do not really mean when they say, "I'm tired." Not the kind you talk about. Not the kind anyone notices right away. The kind that can live inside a person for years, as long as no one looks too closely. When he opened his eyes, the first thing he noticed was the silence. Hospital silence. No machines, no voices, just that empty stillness that gets under your skin. He knew what had happened. He had been in a car crash. He remembered that much. The steering wheel, headlights, a sudden flash, and then nothing. The door opened and an orderly stepped inside. "How long have I been here?" he asked. "1 week," the woman said. Levent frowned. "There was someone with me," he said. "Elif, where is she?" The woman looked down at the file, then back up at him. "No one came to see you, sir. There isn't any other next of kin listed in your file." Then she left. Levent said nothing. There was no one else he could ask. His mother was gone, his father too. He had no brothers or sisters. He and Elif had grown up in the same orphanage. For years, if anything happened, they were the only person the other could call. If Elif was gone, then who was left to ask? He did not ask the woman anything else. Whatever answer he got would not change anything. There was no second name in the file. He waited until the day he was discharged. Maybe she would come. Maybe the door would open. Maybe there was some explanation that still made sense. But as the days passed, that hope only got heavier. And on the day he was discharged, he finally understood. Elif was gone. How could she not come on a day like this? The lights in the room had been dimmed. The night was quiet, but nothing inside Levent was. He sat up in bed, leaned back against the pillow, and looked at the ceiling. But his mind stayed fixed on the door. The door was open. Elif was not there. The thought did not hollow him out. It filled him instead, with something hard, something heavy. It was not normal. Elif was not like that. Levent knew it. That was why he was angry. She wouldn't come? Not even once? There had been no reason, no fight, no slammed doors, no last cruel words. Everything between them had been clear, and that was exactly why her absence made no sense. Levent drove his fist into the side of the bed. Not hard, quiet. Not like someone losing control, like someone asking for an answer. For a week, he had not asked anyone about Elif, because if he asked, he would get an answer. And if he got an answer, the direction of his anger might change. He wanted that anger to stay exactly where it was. He looked at the clock, a little after midnight. Tomorrow he would be discharged. Tomorrow he would go home. Elif would either be there or she would not. But at least the uncertainty would end. That's it, he thought. Not even a note? The thought did not hurt him. It felt more like an insult. Levent lay back down and closed his eyes, but he could not sleep. The door was still open, and the fact that no one came through it was driving him insane. After he was discharged, he went home. Elif's things were exactly where she had left them. She had not taken a single thing. Had she really been waiting for this moment? Did it really have to be that final? This is it, he thought. There was no point staying there anymore. He picked up his phone and started scrolling through apartment listings. He chose Ankara. Gray skies, harsh winters. It matched what he already felt inside. He found one listing, 2-bedroom apartment, 3rd floor. He liked it. Then he thought, what difference does it make? He called the number. The man who answered was the building caretaker. He handled everything for the place. They talked. They made a deal. Right after that, Levent hired a moving company. They came to the house and took a few of his things, a couch, a single bed, and a small nightstand. The bed had originally been bought for guests. Now Levent was the guest. The movers loaded everything up, and he gave them the address. "I'll come later," he said. "The keys with the caretaker, 3rd floor, number 9. Then he went to work. He did not speak to anyone. He wanted out of that city as fast as possible. He went straight to accounting and turned in his resignation. Then he took the first taxi he could find to the bus station and bought a ticket for the first bus to Ankara. By the time he arrived, it was still technically noon, but the sky was already dimming. The city looked like it was in mourning. The air was gray, heavy, low. He got off the bus, took a taxi, and handed the driver the address. When he reached the building, the front door was closed. He looked through the glass, but he could not make out anything beyond the entrance. There was light inside, but no depth to it. He stepped over to the buzzer panel beside the door. The apartment names were old. Some had faded so badly, the letters had started bleeding into each other. At the bottom was a small label that looked like it had been stuck on much later. Caretaker. He pressed it. The buzzer made a short, muffled sound, as if the building did not want the noise getting out. A few seconds passed. Levent was just about to press it again when the lock clicked and the door opened. The caretaker was standing there, middle-aged, wearing a cardigan that looked older than the building. "Yes?" he said. "I'm Levent," he said. "We spoke about apartment number 9? The caretaker nodded, like he was looking at someone familiar. "We know, sir," he said. "Welcome. We've been expecting you." The sentence stayed with Levent for a second, but he was tired. He let it go. He stepped inside. The door closed behind them. Again, there was no sound from the lock. The caretaker reached for the ring of keys hanging from his belt. The keys clattered together. Clink, clatter. The sound lingered in the stairwell longer than it should have. It went up, then came back down. The caretaker sorted through the keys one by one. It took him a while to find the right one. Finally, he pulled out one that looked older than the rest. "3rd floor," he said. "Number 9. He dropped it into Levent's palm. Levent turned toward the stairs. The caretaker stayed behind. He climbed a few steps. Everything seemed normal. Then his foot caught. He stopped, tried again. Same thing. This time he looked down automatically. Normally, people climb stairs without thinking, but that habit did not work here. Every step felt like something his brain had to relearn. It did not feel like a flaw in the building. It felt intentional, like the stairs had been made that way just to force people to look down. As he reached the 1st floor, a sharp smell hit him. Coal and rust, like wet iron. Like an old stove that had not been lit in years, its smell soaked into damp walls. Without realizing it, Levent held his breath. By the 2nd floor, the air had gone back to normal. Dust, moisture, concrete. When he reached the 3rd floor, he stopped again. There was another smell there. Heavy, like wet soil. The smell of earth after rain in a cemetery, as if the ground itself were breathing upward. And inside that smell was one note that did not belong there at all. Jasmine. Not strong, not faint, just there. Wrong. Levent tightened his grip on the key. 3rd floor, number 9. He stopped in front of the door. Then he looked up. The corridor was long, too long. The apartments were small, 2-bedroom units. A hallway that long should not have existed there. For a moment, it felt as if there were empty spaces between the apartments, as if the walls did not fully meet, as if each door stood on its own, leaving invisible gaps in between. Levent let his gaze drift down the corridor. The walls were straight, the paint was smooth, but the proportions were wrong. This was not an optical illusion. Nothing was missing. There was just too much. The corridor seemed to take up more space than the apartments themselves. Levent did not move. The key was still in his hand. For the first time, the building seemed to say something through its shape. He brought the key toward the lock. The lock sat slightly lower than it should have, not much, just enough to feel wrong. He bent a little to open the door. His shoulders folded forward without meaning to. As the key slid into the lock, metal scraped softly. And in that exact moment, he felt something pass behind him. Not contact, not even a touch. More like the air shifting. Thin, silent, as if a strip of silk had slipped behind his back. Not warm, not cold. Just enough to make every hair on his body rise. Like when you become certain something is standing behind you and you cannot make yourself turn around. Levent's back tightened. His breath stopped halfway. The key was still in his hand. The door was still closed. But the emptiness behind him was not the same anymore. He stood there for a second, maybe 2. Then he opened the door. The apartment was silent. But it was not empty. The air was heavy, stale. The dampness did not seem to come from the walls. It felt like it was rising from the floor. There was a weight in the place that settled directly on his chest. A couch stood inside, the one from his old place, and the bed. Other than that, there were only a few boxes on the floor with words written on them in marker. Kitchen, room, mixed. There was no rug. He hesitated for a second over whether to take off his shoes, then stopped caring. He walked to the window and looked outside. The view was ordinary, but really Levent was looking at himself, and it made him angry. For a second, the direction of that anger shifted toward Elif. So this is how it ends, he thought. He did not say it out loud. He shut the door. He was thirsty. He went into the kitchen. A box labeled kitchen sat beside the counter. He opened it and pulled out a glass. Then he turned on the faucet. The water came out dark at first, rust-colored, dirty. Levent frowned and shut it off immediately. No one's lived here in a long time, he thought. He felt irritated with the landlord. Then his shoulders dropped. What difference does it make? He muttered to himself. Out of everything going on, this is what I'm thinking about? He turned the faucet back on. After a while, the water ran clear. He filled the glass. His mind was somewhere else. As he carried it, some of the water spilled onto the floor. He drank part of it. A little remained in the glass. He set it on the counter, then looked down at the spilled water. I'll wipe it up later, he said quietly. I can't deal with that right now. The trip, the move, everything had stacked on top of him. And on top of that, there was the apartment itself. That weight in the air. He went into the bedroom and lay down. There were no sheets, no pillow. He did not care. His mind was still on Elif. His anger toward her weighed more than his exhaustion. They were both orphans. They had both grown up in the same orphanage. They had no one but each other. That thought pressed down on him harder than the bed did. Memories of the good times began to surface, and compared to now, they only made everything inside him tighten more. Then suddenly he shivered. He blamed it on being tired, on not having slept properly. But the sleepier he got, the colder the room seemed to become. He set his phone on the nightstand beside him. The air in the room was getting heavier and colder. Outside, it was the Ankara everyone knew, gray, cold, dark. It was only around 6 in the evening, but night had already fallen over the city. As his eyelids grew heavier, he noticed how cold he felt. He did not even bother turning off the light. He was too drained. For a moment, a shadow seemed to move where the light spilled into the living room. Levent ignored it. He blamed it on exhaustion. And then he fell into a deep sleep. 3:13 a.m. He jolted awake. The movement was sudden, violent, uncontrolled, like he had just fallen in a dream. His breathing was uneven. He reached for his phone and checked the time. 3:14. As he set the phone back on the nightstand, he saw the glass. The same glass he had left in the kitchen before falling asleep. Now it was in the bedroom. For a moment he thought maybe he was remembering wrong because he was half asleep. But the thought did not hold. He was sure. He had left the glass in the kitchen. He had spilled water on the floor. He could not explain the cold feeling that spread through him. He wanted to check. At the same time, he was afraid of finding something he did not want to see. Slowly, he got out of bed. Quietly, he walked toward the kitchen. He stopped in the living room. It felt like there was an invisible block of cold in the middle of it. The air there was heavier, colder. I need to get the windows checked, he thought. He clung to that thought. Then he went into the kitchen. He looked where he had left the glass, then at the floor. The tiles were black. When he turned on the light, part of the spilled water reflected back at him. But something else stood out even more. Someone had stepped in it. There was a mark on the floor. It looked like a footprint. It could not have been his. It was too small, and he still had socks on. The mark looked like someone had stepped there barefoot, and it had no direction, just one print. The hair on Levent's arms stood up. Even then, he told himself he had to be remembering it wrong, because something like that was impossible. He felt a quick rush of fear, but he was still too tired, too groggy. He did not let himself think any further. He went back to the bedroom, drank a little more from the glass on the nightstand, then lay down again, and fell asleep. 2:12 a.m. His alarm suddenly started blaring. Levent looked at it. The sound was familiar. It was the alarm he used every morning for work. He grabbed the phone, looked at the screen. 2:13. He froze. I never set an alarm for this time. He checked it. The alarm was still set for 6:20. A tightness closed around his chest. What is happening? Something was wrong. Nothing was unfolding the way it should. He sat up in bed and tried to think through everything in order, waking up, checking the time. Then he remembered the earlier time, 3:14. The realization hit him all at once. It ran through his body like ice. How was that possible? His throat was dry. His chest burned when he breathed. Then he thought of the glass. He reached toward the one on the nightstand. His hand stopped in midair. It was gone.
Levent got out of bed so fast the frame creaked. He ran to the kitchen. The glass was back where he had first left it when he came into the apartment. Same place, same position. His eyes dropped to the floor. The spilled water was still there, exactly as it had been. It had not evaporated, and there was no footprint in it anymore. Levent could not explain any of it now. It felt like time and space had started trading places. Shaking, he went back to the bedroom. He was going to call Elif. He did not care about pride anymore. He did not care about anger.
He just wanted to get out. He walked into the room, reached for his phone, opened his contacts. A minute passed, maybe two. Then he stopped, looked at his messages, and suddenly remembered. In a fit of anger, he had deleted Elif's number. Not just the number, everything connected to her. He tried to remember it, but it was hard. Like most people now, he did not know it by heart. In his phone, she had been saved as My Elif. That was how he had always called her. He closed his eyes, forced his memory. The numbers started coming back, one by one. 3, 1, 4, 0, 2, 1, 3. But he could not remember how it started. He felt like he was losing his mind. Was it 500, he thought? 500 what? Minutes passed. He still could not get there. Then the numbers came back again, but this time in a different order. 314, 213. Levent went completely still. Elif's phone number matched the times he had woken up. He did not move. It felt like his own body was telling him not to. He sat on the edge of the bed with his back to the door. All he could do was breathe. Then a shiver ran from the back of his neck all the way down his legs. Sharp, uncontrolled. Is something behind me? But he could not turn around, because what if he did, and something really was there? That possibility felt heavier than not looking. Levent tried to gather all his courage. He had to turn around. Whatever was going to happen, it had to happen now. The thought lasted only a few seconds, but to him it felt like hours. At last, in one sudden movement, he turned. What he had expected was not there, but something was wrong with the room. Blue-white lights were moving through it, broken, flickering, but constant. They were not just flashing on and off, they were moving. Almost hypnotized, Levent got to his feet and followed them. He barely felt his own steps. He left the bedroom, entered the living room. The lights were spilling in through the kitchen window, multiplying in the dark, across the walls, the floor, the furniture, everywhere. Levent followed them into the kitchen. The light seemed to pull him toward the window. He was on the 3rd floor. The kitchen window faced the street. He moved closer, placed his hands on the frame, leaned in. The glass felt strange, like a wall that could not be crossed, like bulletproof glass, thick, death. He looked down. There was an ambulance in the street, and a police car. Someone was lying face down on the pavement, wearing a white wool coat. Something tightened in Levent's chest. The sight was familiar. Even from the 3rd floor, he could see every detail with impossible clarity. The glass was like a magnifying lens, thick, focused, cruel, as if it had been made for one purpose only, to make sure he saw. Then his eyes caught on something glinting on the ground. Broken glass? For a second, he could not make sense of it. Then he turned and looked at the counter. The glass was gone. Levent's breath caught. He could not convince himself anymore. He could not say, "I'm remembering it wrong." Everything was too clear. He looked down again. He saw a police officer reaching for his radio. Everything was so sharp, he could even see the vapor leaving the man's mouth in the cold. Then he heard voices. A police officer speaking to a paramedic. "She was dead at the scene," the officer said. "Make sure it goes in the report." Levent's throat tightened. The officer reached for the bag still clutched in the victim's hand. Even before he saw it clearly, Levent knew. A black bag with white lettering on it. "Love you." The officer opened it, looked at the ID inside. "Sir," he said, "the ID says her name is Elif." Something broke loose inside Levent. The white coat. He knew that, too, because he had bought the coat and the bag for Elif himself. Levent started pounding on the glass. "No!" he shouted. But the glass did not even tremble, not a crack, not a sound. And his voice did not go out either. It left his mouth only to be swallowed before it reached the air. The glass was deaf. The room was deaf. "I have to get out," he thought. "I have to get to Elif." The thought cut straight through the panic. Levent spun around and ran for the door. He unlocked it, burst into the corridor, and immediately knew something was wrong. This was not the corridor he had seen when he first arrived. There was no apartment across from him, no door at all. He looked to his left. There was only the hallway, stretching on and on, no end in sight. Levent turned toward the staircase. His heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was echoing through the building's heavy air. He took the first step down. But there was no second, because the stairs were gone. Gone, as if they had never been there, as if he had never come up that way at all. Levent turned and rushed back inside the apartment. The air had changed. The darkness outside the windows was pulling back, replaced by a pale, washed-out light. He ran back to the kitchen, looked out. There was nothing there. No ambulance, no police, no blood. Just the taillights of a few passing cars on the street below. It was getting worse. With one last bit of hope, Levent stepped back out into the corridor. Maybe, he thought, there's another way. He reached the head of the staircase, grabbed the railing. The stairs were still gone, but he could hear the caretaker's voice from below. Levent shouted with everything he had, "Help!" But his voice did not go down. It was as if the stairwell were filled with water, something heavy, deep, black. His voice drowned in it. Then, from below, he heard something else, a familiar voice. "Levent, we spoke about apartment number 9. The voice rose through the empty stairwell. Levent froze. Then another voice followed. "We know, sir," it said. "Welcome. We've been expecting you." Levent could not move. Those words were not new. They had already been spoken. And now the building was giving them back to him.